Okay, so chemistry 1.3 and 4. First 5 is pretty open-ended. If you can, to help your neighbor whose paper you're grading, jot down the 5 that I highlight when we get there, because when we get to the test, after chapter 2 finishes, I'm going to have 5 specific questions and not completely open-ended. But some things in this, Egyptians and Chinese were developing things with alcohol, that was mentioned. I think that was the first signal that this is maybe a college book trying to plug alcohol and be relatable, and the students in college think that the book authors are cool. They mentioned Greeks and Arabs. They mentioned a guy that I don't know if I'm saying the name right, maybe Democritus. Looks like maybe Democritus, but I doubt if that's how you say it. He studied atomic structure. There's somebody named Al-Khwarizmi. I don't know about that one. I think that had something to do with oxygen. They mentioned alchemy, so let's make sure, jot a note down for your friends. Alchemy will make the tests. Not the Mr. Kellner definition, if you know that one, if he still does that. He used to say, I think it was the spooky science is his definition for that. Does anybody know what alchemy is? Turning anything into gold. Lead sometimes trying to do that, but yeah, attempts to turn other stuff into gold. Alchemy was part of the development of chemistry. People were trying to do a get well rich scheme, and they were trying to turn other stuff into gold, and that kind of like let them figure out some things. But yeah, alchemy, turning other stuff into gold, that will make the test. So jot that down on your friend's paper. Alchemy, turning other stuff into gold. They mentioned some Boyle experiments with pressure, volume, and temperature. They mentioned Nobel Prizes. Nobel Prize will make the test. Nobel Prize is Nobel, because that's a person. I think it's Alfred Nobel, and they named it after him. It is not the Nobel Peace Prize. It's just the Nobel Prize. They give Nobel Prizes in a lot of categories, one of which is chemistry, one of which is peace. But you don't win a Nobel Peace Prize for chemistry. You win a Nobel Peace Prize for like making the Ukraine not fight with Russia anymore, or vice versa. So throw that down there. Nobel Prize in chemistry, that's a big deal. Europe was dominant in chemistry until World War I. So that'll be a point I'll hunt for on the test. Up until World War I, Europe was the drivers. How about since World War I? USA. So that'll be a point on the test, that the USA has been the most important chemist stuff since World War I. They mentioned combustion. They mentioned Japan and Russia being important. They predicted that China would become more and more important as things progressed. And then here's the 5th of the points that matter. The father of chemistry is a guy named Lavoisier, Lavoisier. Since he's chemistry's daddy, that feels like a guy that should make a first chemistry test. So Lavoisier, Lavoisier, father of chemistry. And there are other things too. If you're reading another thing that you're sure is in it, if you flip open your book to page 6 and 7 and you can find what the person said, because there's a whole table on page 7 of names that I didn't drop, like the Curies and different people. If they have stuff you know is there, just give it to them. If you're not sure, just go ahead and ask. But the 5 highlight questions were, someday on the test you'll need alchemy, you'll need to know about the Nobel Prize, Lavoisier, Europe, and then US being the dominators. Top 5, anything?
Is it okay if they state the fact but they don't put a name?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
I'm just looking for like 5 factual items.
So, if they put like Robert Boyle and Antoine,
Lavoisier?
yeah,
There's 2.
like word. Okay, so that's 2 points.
You don't have to say what they did. Just
Okay.
be like, hey, they dropped the name Boyle in there.
Okay.
I'm good with that. Top 5?
What's the Europe point?
Europe was important until, Europe was like where the most of the chemistry was done until World War I. And then after World War I, the USA took over. 6 to 8 things on my list here. There's countdowns, there's goals, there's study hints, which they seem to think are humorous. I don't know if you'll agree. There's examples, there's study exercises, there's summaries, there's exercises, there's problems, there's quizzes, there's elements and compounds, there's chemistry of the atmosphere, there's you in chemistry. Those are just all different sorts of features of the book. That's all a win. Blocks of gold. It was the first pure metal found. They mentioned prospectors. They mentioned that it's rare. Stability. They mentioned that it's used as currency for money. They use it for jewelry. It's in some electronics. Mentioned alchemy again. Talked about arthritis treatments. They talked about all sorts of things. If it's something that you're sure about, just give them the point. If you're not sure, we can look it up or ask. Top 10.
I saw that. I saw that
Is it
yesterday.
okay if they say it's a natural element?
If they can find it in the blue box.
For number 8, it says chapter answers found in appendix B2. That's like where the chapter answers are, but that wasn't like one of the bullet points. Is that good?
I don't
Yeah,
care.
I saw that
It's
yesterday.
fine.
Whenever I looked at it, I was like, I'm pretty shy.
Yeah, if you're not sure, just see if it's in the blue box. If it's in the blue box on gold, it's a win. Anybody to 10? Then the more like real questions. 11, we're looking for the word composition, and we're looking for the word changes. And if they're short one of those words, they missed at least a half. And then we need to form a sentence around it, like study science concerned with the composition of substances and the changes they undergo. 12, we're looking for experiment, followed by hypothesis, followed by more experimenting, followed by scientific law. If they go in a funny order that puts scientific law not at the end, I'd go minus half. Then double back, we're explaining experimenting as we collect facts, we collect data by observing. So if they don't have facts, they don't have data, they don't have observing. If they're short one of those words, go like half point. If they're short two of the words, then that's probably a no-go. But collect facts, collect data by observing. Hypothesis is a tentative theory. You could use other words there, but the idea of hypothesis is a point. So that's a 6-point question, 4 titles, 2 follow-ups. Something there.
Would you take information and data?
Yeah, I'll take information for facts. More to 17. 18, abstract is 1, biological is 2, physical is 3, social is 4. I meant to remind you there's 2 Easter egg bonus points there. Does anybody want their quiz back to throw in an Easter egg bonus point that you forgot existed till I'm just saying it now? Okay, so here's the Easter egg bonus points. Chemistry belongs to the physical category. If they said that, there's 1 bonus point. And then social is unlike the others because you can't do controlled experiments. That was the 2nd bonus point. So
Do they have to say that it's the one that you can't do
It's
controlled,
on there somewhere, just not.
yeah,
like controlled experiments, or can they just point out that that's the odd one out?
they'd have to said why. I'll go bonus half point for saying that's the odd one, but full point only if you say odd one and why.
Okay.
More bonus point, follow up.
What are the 4?
And abstract, biological, physical, social.
And can't do controlled experiments.
Can't do controlled experiments. That was for social. Makes it the oddball. 21, anything? Then we've got organic. That's carbon. The book example was aspirin, but other stuff could work. Anybody need anything with organic, carbon, aspirin? And that was what we were talking about. Since that book question didn't say carbon, we knew what it was. Inorganic is not having carbon. The book example was car battery, but other things would work for that as well. Any follow up on inorganic, not carbon, car battery? Analytical, you can either go with the word qualitative and quantitative, 2 half-point words, I guess. Or instead of qualitative, you could say what's in something, and instead of quantitative, say how much there is. And it's still 2 half points to make like an explanation. The book example was measuring pesticide in water, but plenty of other stuff works. So analytical, 2 half points, either fancy words, qualitative, quantitative, or 2 phrases, what's in there and how much. Pesticide and water, something there. Okay, so physical, we're gonna say structures. You could either say kinetics or say how fast things change. And you say thermodynamics, or you could say the role of heat. If you missed one of those items, I'd go half. If you missed 2 of those items, I'd say no go, because it's closer to wrong than right, and I'm not gonna give you a third of a point for a 3-part thing. So structures is 1, how fast something changes, or kinetics is 2, role of heat or thermodynamics is 3. Get 3 right, full point, 2 right, half point, 1 or none right, no point. Book example was ice melting. Anything there? Biochemistry is living stuff, anything alive, living systems, something like that, life. That saliva was the book example, but plenty of other stuff would work with that. Question about scoring that at all? That stuff will be back for the test. You're not going to see it till the test. We go clean sweep, wipe out, and for the next reading / quiz, it's 2, 1, and 2 to read. 8, there's 10 points. All 10 of them are either a fill in the blank or like a very short answer in response to a question that it might as well be a fill in the blank. There's no like lengthy definitions. It's just 8 words. You always want to pay attention to what is the chapter about. So whether that's chapter 2 or chapter 3 or whatever, a fair question for any chapter is, what is the chapter about? Can be found on a page such as this. So that should always be your first look when you enter a new chapter. Fair question is always, what is this chapter about? Those are pretty well highlighted. These are pretty well highlighted. If you just kind of go through the stuff that's in the margins, that's gonna get you 6 of the 10. So if it's in the margin, for sure, you want to know that, because there's 6 words in the margin and all 6 of those appear. So that's 6 out of the 10. The other ones are kind of like in the reading, but they are, it's not just basic text. It's going to somehow be italicized or stressed in some way. They're not super hidden. There is one math formula that you'll need to know. The one thing isn't really like bold or italics, but just be careful whenever, if they're contrasting anything and you see like a 1-2 kind of moment, that's, you know, if it's 1-2 and they stress 1 and they don't stress 2, they probably both mattered even if they didn't put them both in the margin. We saw that the other day where they had like scientific method 1, 2, 3, and they put 1 and 2 in the margin and not 3, but I did 1, 2, 3. So if they do a list and it's like they stress one more than the other, don't discard the one that they didn't stress. That's random tips for you. But there's definitely more than, oh no, there's 7 words in the margin. I take that back. So if all you had is the margin words, you've got 7 out of 10. Math formula makes 8. Other tips I gave you should be sufficient to spot 9 and 10, I hope, if you were zoned in on that. There is there homework? Yeah, what we're doing, homework is a fairly quick hit. There's a thing called the Chapter 1 quiz. It has 3 problems, and it is about as long as it seems to be. 2 has ABC, but 3 and 1 just are sort of normal. It's like a mini version of what you did last night. The 1 to 5, way bigger than the chapter quiz. But the chapter quiz is right after where you left off with 5. You might not have even noticed anything else was there as you did it. There's like this little speck of homework there called the chapter quiz. So, chapter quiz for Monday or Tuesday, 10-point quiz for Tuesday, 2.1 and 2. And that's about all we have to say about that. We're all back on the same page now. We already did off camera some conversations on the 1 to 5 that people had as the quizzes were still going. Does anybody have a 1 to 5 you want to revisit? A little bit of insider information. For video completion purposes, people in the room could ignore me. Some folks asked about 4D, and my hint on 4D was to look at the 4th word at the beginning 6 letters, and that sort of gives a hint there. Somebody asked about 5E, and my hint was they named things like copper and hydrogen with names and formulas, but they didn't name carbon. And since they didn't name carbon, that was giving away 5E. I think that was the questions that we had today that emerged. That's it. Let's stop that up.